Councillors, we might make a start. It's 5:30, so we'll now declare the meeting open. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our March Council meeting, and welcome to the people in our gallery tonight. I'd like to begin by we, the Greater Shepparton, begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to the tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture, and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Item number 2, our privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Item number 3, which is apologies. Councillors, do we have any apologies tonight?
Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation that the apologies from Councillor Summer and Councillor Sutton be noted and a leave of absence granted.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, do any councillors need to declare a conflict of interest tonight?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'll declare a conflict in respect of an item that occurs in the confidential part of the agenda.
Thank you very much for that. Noted. Number 5, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Is any item of the minutes opposed? Not, would a councillor like to move the recommendation?
Happy to move the recommendation, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 1. The minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 19th of February 2019 and the special council meeting held on the 26th of Feb as circulated be confirmed.
Very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Mr Harriott, do we have any questions tonight?
We have 2, but the author is not in attendance tonight, so we've sent a response direct to the author.
Very much for that. Council will now turn to page 2, item 7.1, the Volunteer Strategy 2019 to 2022. The recommendation is also on page 2. Do I have a councillor who would like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
I move the recommendation on page 2 as a motion, which says that the council adopt the Greater Shepparton City Council Volunteer Strategy 2019 to 2022.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just quickly, it's really great to see that the volunteering strategy has a very important place in Council's strategic directions. And it is also pleasing to emphasize that Greater Shepparton's performance in volunteering is above the state average, as we know. So as per the ABS Census 2016, 1 in 3 people volunteer in Greater Shepparton. So this highlights that as a community, we value the benefits of social connectedness and active citizenship that is gained out of volunteering. So this strategy has identified top 4 areas in the region, which are management committees and committees, fundraising and sales, preparation of food, coaching, referring and judging. So these are the key areas where our community is engaged in volunteering. The 4 key pillars of this strategy are promotion, recruitment, support and celebrations. So it's great to see that the strategy has completed its community consultation and the feedback has been incorporated and it's now ready for adoption. So I endorse this strategy. Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
There is absolutely nothing left to say.
Okay. Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors will now go to page 6, 7.2, the Volunteer Policy Review, and the recommendation is also on page 6. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Happy to move that, Madam Mayor, that the council adopt the Volunteer Policy 07 POL.3.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just following on from Councillor Abdullah, she really did sum up the strategy very well, and the policy is an extension of the strategy. Council relies heavily on volunteers in many of the programs that we offer to the public. And this policy is to ensure that volunteers across the municipality are supported with the standards of best practice, which is what we all try to achieve. Just reading that the objective of the volunteer policy is to ensure that the best standards and best practice as a consistent approach in supporting volunteers within council and the community. This adheres to the national standards of volunteering, provide a consistent approach to recruitment of volunteers across council, engage and retain volunteers, recognise and celebrate volunteers across the municipality, and respond to emerging trends and issues in the volunteer sector. I think it's very important that we do adhere to those 5 sections within the policy. As I mentioned before, volunteers are very important to council. We do recognise them. We have an annual volunteers dinner where we recognise their services throughout the year, and it's great to see that we've updated our volunteer policy to encapsulate all of the volunteering guidelines.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Hazen, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, Madam Mayor, it's been well covered.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors will now go to page 9, item 7.3, the Greater Shepparton Multicultural Strategy 2019 to 2022. The recommendation is also on page 9. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
I would like to move the recommendation on page 9 that the Council adopt the Multicultural Strategy 2019 to 2022.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, 14.8% of the Greater Shepparton population is identified as being born in country other than Australia. So we have people from 50 countries, and they speak 40 different languages, and they all contribute to Greater Shepparton in various ways. The multicultural strategy is aligned with Greater Shepparton's Strategic Council objectives, which says that Greater Shepparton is valued for cultural celebrations, inclusion, and engagement of our diverse communities. So for Council, hosting events such as Converge Festival, St. George's Road Food Festival, it's no doubt a significant expression of community engagement and celebration of our cultural diversity. However, we also have to continuously work and aim for reducing barriers to entry for multicultural communities and making our services inclusive to those communities based on their special needs. This is vital for better social inclusion, health and well-being, and active citizenship outcomes. So one of the examples of the objectives of in the action plan of the strategy says that to provide recreational opportunities for multicultural communities that are culturally appropriate. And this is important because to mitigate the effects of social isolation and marginalization of some multicultural communities in this day and age is even more important. And it is necessary for us to ensure that men, women, and children from all multicultural backgrounds also have equal access to services and facilities in our municipality. Hence, the strategy is important to fulfill our vision of promoting good multicultural practice and leadership within and across the municipality. So I'm glad to see that the strategy is in place and it has gone through the consultation process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, as a councillor, you never stop learning, and I've clearly learned tonight to stop seconding Councillor Abdullah's motions because he covers it so well. I think as a summary, though, what I'd love to be able to do is show everyone footage of the Shepparton Lake on Saturday night and show what a magnificent, diverse community we have here, and we're very lucky to have it. It works so beautifully, and this is a part of that. This is a part of bringing it all together. And so I totally support Councillor Abdullah's wording and the wording of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman?
There'd be many councils across Victoria that wouldn't see the need or the necessity to have such a strategy because of the cultural profile of their respective communities. But for Greater Shepparton, we've got a demographic profile that's unique for a provincial city within Australia. For well over 100 years, we've always been a destination point for migration from non-traditional backgrounds, and that has continued. In more recent times, we've been a destination point for people from a refugee background, many of whom is what Dennis was referring to on Saturday night. And the anecdotal evidence from those communities, or it's more than anecdotal, it's what the communities themselves report, is that in numbers over the last 10 to 15 years, those people now represent 10% of Greater Shepparton's population. That's for other provincial centres in Victoria or around Australia, they're unheard of numbers. And people come here because there is opportunity, people are welcomed, there is available employment. And quite often, the events that I attend around Australia, Shepparton is nominated as a model for successful settlement, which brings about the need for a strategy of how the council responds, how the council becomes more proactive. And indeed, in the very first iteration of the strategy, it was a fairly aspirational sort of document. And as it's been reviewed and updated, it's become more of an action-oriented document. And I think that will progress over time. And it's important that people accept and acknowledge who we are. And I think people who are born and bred here in Shepparton, it's just a fact of life. This is who we are. That's often a bit of a challenge or confronting for people who come to Shepparton in their employment or to start a business. It's often their very first exposure to both Indigenous and multicultural, and so there are some issues there about people accepting and understanding what the rules of the game are here. But I'd commend the staff for the development of the strategy and look forward to a number of the items in here coming to fruition.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Adam?
I think I've learned my lesson as well, not to speak after Councillor Hazelman when it comes to these sort of issues.
I've been telling you that for a while.
It's the first time I've ever said it, Councillor Hazelman. But anyway, look, I just want to quickly bring attention to the fact that this strategy, an associated action plan, aligns with the Municipal Association of Victoria's Statement of Commitment to Cultural Diversity, and that aims to promote and facilitate good multicultural practice and leadership within and across Victorian local government. So it's great that it fits in with the bigger picture. And being the council's representative for the MAV and also being on their multicultural committee as well, subcommittee, we meet fairly regularly, 2 or 3 times a year, and I can assure you, as Councillor Hazelman alluded to, we get noted all the time during those meetings as being a model, not for just Victoria but for Australia. So this strategy is very fitting and it's great, and it just keeps a good work moving forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, we'll now go to page 13, item 7.4, Greater Shepparton Public Health Strategic Plan 2018 to 2028. The recommendation is also on page 13. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor like to move that motion? Got the right page there. Would someone like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah. Like to move? Sorry, page 13.
Yeah, I'll move the motion, the recommendation on page 13, that the council endorse the Greater Shepparton Public Health Strategic Plan 2018 to 2028.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Al-Zavari. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I would just like to say that it's great to see that there's a health strategic plan, which is of course in line with the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008, which reinforces our statutory role to protect, improve and promote public health and well-being within the municipal district. And as I noticed, this plan has been prepared, of course, in consultation with all the relevant partners and stakeholders in this space. So it's in that sense, the consultation is impressive, and it's good to see that the action plan is actually highlighting actions as well as identifying the owners of those actions as well. So health is, of course, health goals have been set to drive the strategic focus of Greater Shepparton's public health effort, and there are some livability domains that have been aligned to these 4 environments. And these livability domains include social environment, built environment, economic environment, and natural environment. So all these 4 domains contribute towards the overall health and well-being of the people living in our municipality. So I am happy to see that that work has been done, and of course our Greater Shepparton Public Health Advisory Committee will be working towards achieving this strategy, and there will be an annual update and review of the strategy. So it's good to see that we have this strategy in place. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Councillor Alzavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Abdul has cornered the market tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 18, item 8.1, contract 1872, provision of temporary placements and contractors. The recommendation is also on page 18. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 18, and that is that Council accept the tender submitted by Recruitment Select 1897, Program Skilled Workforce Limited, Chandler McLeod, Interwork Australia, CNC Projects and CAF Consulting Services for contract number 1872, provision of temporary placements and contractors, which are a panel of suppliers. Note that the contract term is for a period of 3 years with an estimated total value of $2 million. And we authorise the CEO to sign and seal the contract documents.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovannetti, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Alzavari. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. With an organisation of council size, there's always a need to have casual staff filling in for various people who go on leave or any extended absences. In the past, we've had a contract which expired in 2018, and it's now necessary to re-tender that contract, which we've done, and the companies that I read out earlier were the tenderers that replied to it, and as such they now do form a panel of suppliers, so we have not just one organisation that we can deal with, but we have many. So I think it's a good move for council to engage with these firms, providing employment to local people.
Very good. Thank you very much. Councillor Alzavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just add to the commentary made by Councillor Giovannetti that effectively it recognises that council doesn't always have the necessary skill set in terms of people to fill those roles, and this contract will effectively address the issues that come from that shortage, and as Councillor Giovannetti says, we'll have a panel that we can choose from to fill those positions as they arise.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
I
think what the report also highlights, this has been a long-standing problem for rural and regional areas, is the capacity to attract skilled workers for specific functions, and council is not exempt from that scenario either. And some people might say, oh, if you've got a vacancy, just advertise it and place an advertisement and go through the normal recruitment process, but that can often be an extended process in the country. It's not possible to attract people like skilled engineers, town planners, environmental health people, etc. Those positions often take significant time to fill, and it means that there is a shortage of council service provision during that time, so it's appropriate there is a panel of suppliers that on a very short-term basis people can be sourced and fill that vacancy on a temporary basis. So this is a fairly important contract for the council to be letting, because it maintains the provision of service at a level that we would desire.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hazelman. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 21, item 8.2, contracts awarded under delegation and contracts advertised but yet to be awarded. The recommendation is also on page 21. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation printed on page 21 of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. We'll have a seconder. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think this is always an important part of the council agenda, because it indicates the work that is in the pipeline, a very important means of communicating to the public what is going on. One element in here that I view with some trepidation is the the contracts or the tenders advertised not yet awarded. I see the status of many of these is tender currently being evaluated. So I'd anticipate at a coming council meeting very soon, there's going to be a whole raft of these that will be required to be awarded, and significantly they'll be in the area of our capital works program, I suspect, to ensure that we meet our targets in those areas. But again, I'd state again, this is an important part of the council agenda for as a method of informing the community about a whole raft of work that's occurring.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazeman. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Councillor Hazeman's correct. There is several that are coming to us very soon. And there's a couple there that are especially interesting. The Balaclava Road, Burney Road intersection, for one, is a major piece of infrastructure that will be going in. And the good people of Merrigan will be looking forward to their splash park when that arrives. So it's just a couple that we should have answers to and tenders let in the next month or so.
Thank you for that, Councillor Patterson. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah?
Yeah, I would just like to highlight some of the, just for the purpose of information for the community, that, they can have a look at these contracts that have been awarded under delegated authority or going to be awarded. One of the interesting ones that has been awarded is the consultancy services for the Greater Victoria Commonwealth Games pre-feasibility study. So it's really exciting to see that things are progressing in that direction. And also the contracts that, the tenders that have been advertised but not awarded, and they are going to be awarded soon. They include, as Councillor Patterson has said, Merrigan Splash Park. It's really pleasing to see that option is there, and the community there will be definitely pleased to see the outcome. And also this provision of architectural design for the redevelopment and expansion of the Shepparton Sports and Event Centre. That is very interesting, and that's very exciting too. And of course our Tatura Library design consultant for architectural design of Tatura Library. And also one of the things that is towards the end is the provision of affordable housing policy development. So I'm particularly pleased to see, because we have, among ourselves, we have been talking a lot about housing affordability, and it's good to see that we are actually going to do some work around the policy development in this area, and from there onwards there will be, of course, some concrete steps. So yeah, so it's good to see, to have that information, that what are the projects that are coming our way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 26, item 8.3, the February 2019 monthly financial report. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Ozavari.
I'll move the recommendation on page 26 that the council receive and note the February 2019 monthly financial report and I'll just wait a minute.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd invite Mr Teitzel to give us a brief overview, a flavour of what's going on.
Thank you very much. I invite Mr Teitzel.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and through you to the councillors. Not a huge amount to report this month. The key indicators on the first page of the report in your attachments, the operating performance, financial health and financial obligations are all within or exceeding target ranges on the year-to-date numbers, so we're fairly happy with the way we're tracking at this point in time. We currently have about $50 million in cash investments, which has returned us $828,000 in interest income year-to-date, which is a good result so far. On the detail with the operating performance, year-to-date, everything is pretty steady. There's a favourable variance on grants. That's just an early receipt of a grant that'll correct itself by the end of the full year. Of note, with the forecast to year-end, materials and consumables, we're forecasting a permanent favourable variance of about $2.3 million. We've worked quite hard across the organisation with managers and budget officers to identify savings in this year's budget, and that will we believe to be an achievable result which improves our bottom line and the ability to fund future capital works in future years. Onto the capital works budget. We're tracking along, and as quite rightly noted, there's a number of contracts that are sitting there in backing up for probably the next meeting, where you'll see a lot of those contracts come through and a lot of the capital works money will start to get spent. There is quite an amount to be spent between now and the end of the financial year to hit our targets, and we're reviewing the physical completion rate of those jobs, and the infrastructure team is working quite hard to deliver against that budget. So
It's a tight for that. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Another thing I've learned tonight is don't follow the financial director if you're speaking on finances. But anyway, the one thing is, as all our councillors I think will agree with what's presented to us regularly, and I'm meaning monthly, is basically a diagram that explains where we sit compared to the recommended average of other councils. It's recommended by the state government, and that's every month on several different topics: operating performance, financial health and financial obligations. That allows us to really keep track on where we're going, know where we sit compared to other councils, and know where we sit in reference to the Godfather in Melbourne that can pull the plug on us. So it's good to have that up to date and have the knowledge we need to know that we're going in the right direction without getting to the finer details.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 28, item 9.1, rename the Flanagan Place Tatura. The recommendation is also on, the recommendation is on page 30. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 30, and I'll read it out. That the council approve the renaming of Flanagan Place to Memorial Drive in accordance with the naming rules for places in Victoria 2016. Memorial Place, I said that. Memorial Place. Sorry, Madam Mayor. The CEO was listening intently for the first time. 2016. Statutory requirements for naming roads, features and localities 2016.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, and I've got to check my memorial drives now. The reason I got confused is because the issue here was Flanagan. There's a Flanagan Drive and a Flanagan Park and Flanagan Place. There was a lot of reference to the Flanagans, and I think during the process, the Flanagan family were quite happy for this to occur, because there's still a great reference to that family in Tatura. It'll avoid confusion, which has been happening throughout Tatura in respect to people getting confused with the addresses. In line with the process, there was no submissions to object to this name change, so we've been through all the correct processes, and this is the result, and I'm quite happy to have this occur.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the side or benefits, additional benefits, is the fact that emergency services can and do respond to a multitude of addresses, and when there's a multitude of similar sounding names and locations, time is sometimes a very relevant consideration for ambulance, police, fire brigade. So I support that.
Thank you, Councillor Ozavari. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 33, item 9.2, which is the adoption of the Shepparton Marootina Flood Mapping and Flood Intelligence Project, March 2019, and the Greater Shepparton City Council Municipal Flood Emergency Plan, August 2018. The recommendation is on page 34. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
I'll move that motion, Madam Mayor, on page 34. Would you like me to read it out?
No, that's fine. It's fairly long. That's fine. Do we have a seconder, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll second the motion.
Councillor Hazeman. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, this is a very important document. It's been going on for couple of years now. It's to do with getting our flood levels in the region correct. They're continually changing with different infrastructure that goes in. More importantly, it's about new technology that's been developed over the years that allows us to truly identify where the flood level is, looking for that elusive 1 in a 100-year flood that we hope we never see, but would like a little brother of it or something that we come along and might break a drought for us. But it's the CMA have been utilising this for the last 12 months or so as setting their flood levels. They're a referral agents to council. Someone applies to have a building put on their land. We refer it to the CMA. They tick off on the flood level. So it's very important that we get this right. And I have no doubt, there's been people that have objected to it. I have no doubt they're correct. In another 10 years, this will change again. There'll be more technology available. There'll be different things built and more restrictions built. It's an ongoing document that will forever be changing in some slight way. But it's very important to get our flood levels right for our building, but it's also very important to get it right for our safety. We don't need to be building dwellings in places that can be severely infected with a flash flood. And also we need to make sure that those buildings can be evacuated without having to go through deep water in times of a quick flood. So it is very important. There's been a lot of work going into it. There's been a lot of consultation which has been out there, and I'd like to congratulate the people that have worked on it. It's been a very big job, as I said, and this is the end result of it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Haseman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Patterson's dead right. There will be continuous work in this area. As technologies improve, we will no doubt refine this process even further. And significantly, if the expert predictions around climate change and the likelihood of more severe events of this nature around flooding, we're going to need to be right on top of our game, and this has probably have to be a more regular process than it has been in the past. I think it's important to note the process, and as was referred to previously, the study report, the project report, has been out on public exhibition, and there were 3 objections to it. The objectors came and spoke to the council expressing their concerns. It should also be noted that this flood mapping and flood intelligence project has already been through one level of scrutiny through Planning Team Amendment C193, where it was endorsed by the Independent Planning Panel of Victoria for the purposes of that particular amendment. We should also note that the second part of this recommendation, or this motion, is to prepare and exhibit a Planning Team amendment to include the findings and recommendations. So there will be another public process. The whole thing will start all over again. People will have the opportunity to make submissions to that planning scheme amendment. It has the potential that council could then initiate another planning panel through an independent panel through Panels Victoria. So this isn't the end of the process. In a lot of ways, this is only getting the process started again. That the public submissions process is still got quite some way to go. And ultimately, there will be a decision from the council to accept, modify or reject the recommendation of that panel before making a formal recommendation to the Minister. And the Minister, as happened in the example I was referring of Amendment C193, didn't totally accept the recommendations from the panel in respect of 193. The Minister strengthened the ultimate recommendations to make the references to this flood mapping project a mandatory component for consideration in that particular study area. So I think the history of the preparation of this report is very strong. It stood up to scrutiny in one panel hearing, and I'm very confident it'll stand up to scrutiny in any other process that's subjected to.
Thank you very much, Councillor Haseman. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Giovanetti.
Madam Mayor, as Councillors Patterson and Haseman have already indicated, there were several objectors to the flood mapping scheme. And one of the things that they did raise was the legality of the process that was used, and that was a concern to councillors at the time. And we did ask the CEO to provide us with advice in relation to that, and the advice that we've received is that all aspects of the process were legal in every aspect. So that concern that the objectors had was allayed by that advice.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, could I call for a division, please?
Sure. Division, so all those in favour, we have Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Hazeman, Councillor Giovannetti, Councillor Patterson and Councillor Abdullah, and against we have Councillor Adam and Councillor Ozavari. Thank you very much for that. The motion is carried. Is there any closing comments, Councillor Patterson?
I don't think I'm entitled to.
No, it's all done.
It's taken
Done and dusted.
Done.
Taken the vote.
Yeah, it's finished.
Done. Thank you very much.
You weren't going to say anything anyway, were you? Well, I'll put the
I should have been quicker, sorry about that. Okay, councillors, we'll now go to item 9.3, the Goulburn River Valley Tourism Memorandum of Understanding and Greater Shepparton City Council. Page 42, the recommendation is also on page 42. Do I have a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Patterson?
I'd like to move the recommendation on page 42. It's in two parts and I'd like to read it out. That the council not proceed with the proposed I don't know why I'm reading it out, I can pronounce that word. Yeah, MOU between the Greater Shepparton City Council and Goulburn River Tourism. Work with the local tourism industry to investigate the future regional tourism positioning direction of Greater Shepparton.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Second
Councillor
motion,
Adam. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
This has been an issue for council for quite a few years. I remember attending a function of this group probably 4 years ago, and I come away feeling dejected. Shepparton didn't even rate a mention on that night. We're the major funding of the Goulburn River Tourism, which is made up of two other councils. As a council, we made a decision when there was a new hierarchy involved in that organisation to give it a go, and I'd like to congratulate Van Heulen, who put her shoulder to the wheel and worked really hard down there. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of support. Whilst we're the major supplier of funds to this organisation, I believe we receive the least benefits of anyone. And I think we are in a unique position where we're landlocked from Melbourne regarding the other two councils. We are big enough and we're strong enough to go it alone. We will need to find, and that's in reference to the first motion, which I firmly support, that we should withdraw and utilise our funds in another way. The issue we have now is we can't afford to sit around on our backsides and do nothing. We need to get moving on the second option. We need to be in that market. We need to be right out there and pushing our face, where we've got some terrific tourism projects coming up that'll be new to the region, as well as what we've already got. We have to capitalise on that, and we have to get a formula in place that we can actually get the best bang for our buck out there and attract as much of the tourism dollars as we can. Having said that, we also have to find a way of being connected to a regional tourism body, so that allows us to be to have more chance of success when seeking matching funds, etc. So I highly recommend the recommendation. It is in two parts, and we have to address number one, which we're doing tonight. Then the work starts with number two, and we have to really get working on that pronto.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Patterson that we've been involved with this group for a number of years. We have been their greatest funder, and there hasn't been, to my knowledge, any measurable outcomes to the group. I'm sure the people involved were doing their best and trying to provide those outcomes for us, but I don't believe that it's been successful. But that's the nature of this game. I mean, if something doesn't work, we should move on and try something different. Having said that, our own Eco Dev team has done a great job, and our events team, in providing sports tourism and all the other associated things that we do in Greater Shepparton. So I don't think we've really been missing out. However, if we decide that amount of money should go into another venture, point 2, where it says work with our local tourism industry to investigate future regional tourism positioning, well, I think we should be firmly looking at that option and engaging with all that type of industry in our area. And try and form some sort of forceful and effective tourism attraction team. And I think that's what we'll be working towards.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? I'd like to speak to the motion. Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just say that, yes, I fully agree with Councillor Patterson about why we need to come to sort of end this MOU and come out of that partnership. I just want to emphasize on point number 2 that what's next for us, and as you have highlighted, that we now need to work and make sure that that vacuum is not there, and we are aligned with any future regional tourism partners. I just want to highlight that, yes, there is a need to achieve a very holistic and well-integrated tourism positioning plan because, and as the recommendation is saying, that we need to work with the local tourism industry, and it has different operators in this space. We want to make sure that our work is not isolated, it's integrated, and it's integrating different elements of this tourism space, which includes, of course, events, management, hospitality, accommodation, tourism. Everything is part of the same puzzle. So we just have to work together with the local industry and make sure that we've got an integrated plan. Thank you.
Much. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman.
I totally agree with everything that other councillors have said and highlight the fact that for a long period of time we've been dissatisfied with the arrangement that we were in. But I would emphasise the point that the recommendation or the motion that's been presented is in 2 parts, and I'll focus more on part 2. I think from an ethical position it would have been very difficult for this council to start investigating or acting on part 2 without resolving on part 1. We need to remember that these other municipalities, we're involved and engaged with those municipalities across a number of areas. That's what I'll call joint ventures. And I think if we'd have been moving in another direction at an earlier point in time, I think that would have been a significant example of us acting in poor faith. And I think we would have been subjected to some criticism from our partners and led us to a position where potentially they would have been a bit hesitant about engaging with us in other activities. So I think the way we've done it would withstand any sort of probity test. And I think I totally agree with Councillor Patterson. Now is the time, presumably having made this decision in the next minute or so, we very quickly move in another direction to explore what are the best options for tourism for Greater Shepparton.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 46, item 10, reports from councillors nil received. Item 11, reports from special advisory committees nil received. Item 12, notice of motion, amendment or rescission nil received. Item 13, documents for signing and sealing nil received. Now turn over to page 47, item 14.1, councillors community interaction and briefing program. The recommendation is on page 48. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move, not the recommendation as printed, but a variation of it, which I'm not too sure, Beck, whether it's going to come up on the screen or...
14.1?
No, it's not. Okay, well, other councillors have been provided with a copy of it, and I'll read it in total so that it's not misunderstood. I'll move that the summary of the councillors' community interaction and briefing program be received and a record of assemblies of councillors be noted. And 2, that the council acknowledge the resignation of Dr John Laurie from the SAM Advisory Committee and thank him for his valuable contribution to the committee over the past 5 years.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll
Councillor
second the motion,
Adam.
Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to that motion?
With pleasure, Madam Mayor. I think most around the table in the room have probably known John Laurie over many years for his contribution, not just to the museum, but for a range of other activities in and around Greater Shepparton. And John's recent resignation from the SAM Advisory Committee finalises a substantial formal association with the museum, but I'm pretty confident his personal level it will continue. And whilst the motion acknowledges his valuable contribution to the committee over the past 5 years, I can assure people his association and contribution extends over a significantly longer period of time. And John, with his late wife Margaret, was instrumental in forming, with others interested in the arts, the precursor of the current Friends of Sam. Now, John has been a significant financial contributor towards acquisitions, and his wise counsel on all matters relating to the museum will be missed from the advisory committee. And I'd like to take the opportunity to wish John all the very best in his retirement. I don't think John will ever be fully retired from anything that he has an interest in, but in a formal sense he's retired, and I would express the gratitude of the council for his contribution over that period of time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman, for that important acknowledgement. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to that motion?
Just to add, Madam Mayor, that it's been an especially busy period. I'm looking at the list, there's quite a lot of different activities and events and meetings that councillors have all attended sporadically, so yeah, just a busy period, which is good.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We now go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 49, item 15, urgent business not included on the agenda. We had nil received. Item 16, confidential management reports. We do have a recommendation, which is item 16.1. Would someone like to move the recommendation, please, as a motion?
Happy to move that, Madam Mayor, that the recommendation on page 49.
Meeting be closed. Yep, to members.
Yep.
So we might just read that out. Yes, please, because we will ask.
The pursuant to section 89(2)(h) of the Local Government Act 1999, that the council meeting be closed to members of the public for consideration of a confidential item 16.2, being the Cultural Heritage Awards 2019, that the council resolves to lift the declaration of confidentiality effective from 27 April 2019 to enable public announcement of all winners at the Cultural Heritage Awards ceremony.
Have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Alzavarri. We need to ask the people of Gallery to leave the meeting, please.